for having me. My name's Tim Cooley. A little bit about my background. I know they read it before, but I've done a lot of things. My career started off really in sports medicine. That's what brought me to Utah. But my first real job was actually in marketing. So I got to be the guy who gives food away for Cliff Bar. I went all over the state of Utah doing this. Amazing experience, right? So I got to be in front of people. The next thing that I did was I got to be able to do digital marketing for a company here locally called ClearLink. It's really cold in here, just saying. So, so I got to be involved with ClearLink, and I got to be like on the lead generation side of a business for the first time. So I went from sports medicine to driving tons and tons of traffic to websites to the tune of about $14 million is what we did with a team of about 4 people. And then I did that for other companies for a number of years. Went and got my master's in business administration, and then I started doing things on my own. So I was like, I got this skill, I'll build a website, I'll drive traffic, and then ultimately that's what I sold, which was Cooley Fitness, a health and wellness company. And then more on that is I was like, where can I take this? So I got the opportunity to run a business accelerator called The Mill, just down here in Sandy. Worked with hundreds and hundreds of startups in the same world, right? Try to get them to drive traffic to their websites. And this is going to sound real familiar. We're going to keep reiterating these things, right? So same thing. I ran a podcast. How do I drive traffic to my podcast, right? And then finally, now I am the director of entrepreneurship for the state of Utah, which is super exciting, helping other entrepreneurs, maximize what they can do. And so I'm super excited to share with you guys on a little bit of my story, but take this from the perspective of AI and then tools on how maybe you guys can do something similar to what I've done in the past. So I have used nearly every marketing tool in existence. When I was screening deals for Park City Angels, I got to see tools that you guys will never see because they don't exist anymore. But I've also got to use tools that are huge now, way before anybody else got to use them. So I've been involved in this for a really long time. And many of you guys have probably used MailChimp, maybe HubSpot, right? You probably got your free access to Salesforce or something like that. So these tools are hugely, hugely powerful, yet very few of us know actually how to use them to the way that they're meant to be used. And we listened earlier to the Salt Lake Tribune. They have an entire team who's great at doing these types of things, but us as individuals, we don't have those resources typically. So it's easier for me to see these, so. Okay, if you are unfamiliar, this is what, if you look at the chart in the upper left, I guess, or upper right for you guys, this is known as the buyer's journey. So it starts with awareness, right? And so it goes from awareness to consideration to purchase, and then it goes into, I can't remember the next one, but it's a process, right? And it repeats. And we don't think of ourselves as process people. I am a process person. And if you ever look at this journey and you think about the last thing that you bought, you would have bought it if you didn't know about it, right? And so if you look at certain products, I just put them up there, right? Some products are super easy to be aware about, right? So you can Google them like, I need to shave every day, right? So you can Google a razor, right? You can Google certain things. But how many people know about the 100 of events that are happening tomorrow? Right? So we're in this event space. Most of us have done events. We're constantly trying to keep people aware about what we're doing. And the truth is we suck at it, right? Events are really, really hard because they're constantly changing. And the audience for that event is constantly changing, right? You could get 1,000 people at one event, run the next event and get 2, and we don't really know why. And so the same thing happens with our donors, sponsors, things like that, right? If we're not constantly in that awareness side of things, so there's these 5 pillars of awareness, but if we're not keeping people aware, we'll never know. And that's what we end up failing at. Okay, and the reasons why. It's easier, I'm sorry. I'm gonna step out here because I can't see this thing. So, should I just use the microphone? Awesome, thank you. Testing. Test, oh, there we go. Okay, the reason is the most of us, and I've been in this situation many, many times in my career, especially as an entrepreneur getting started, we are usually understaffed. So the person who runs marketing does a million other things, right? So we're usually a team of one. Like in my case, I have me and a part-time person with my initiative for the entire state. I represent all entrepreneurs in the entire state of Utah, which is about 600,000 people, with 2 people, right? That is crazy, right? Our budgets are super small. So what ends up happening is we get overworked, right? So we have these events that we're putting on. They're our major element for the way we recruit, the way we get our messages out there. But that's not my primary responsibility. My primary responsibility might be fundraising or taking care of my children. It doesn't really matter. That event becomes a very small part of what we end up doing. And then the third part is we're underskilled. And this doesn't mean anything about like your capability. It just means that you're gonna focus your effort where you need to. So how many of us, know if you don't have to raise hands, are incredibly great at Photoshop and Illustrator, right? And event marketing and building websites? Like it's just not possible with a team of maybe 1 to 2 people, and operations and sales and building relationships, right? So we have to get really good at something. And we usually just say, you know what, it's good enough, and we move on. So in this world of nonprofits, it's been mentioned before, in business it's easy, right? You put in an X number of dollars, you get a return that's hopefully greater, and if that's the case, you're gonna keep doing that, right? So you're gonna put $500 in, and you're gonna make $3,000, and then there's a profit margin. But in the nonprofit space, that's not true. You're gonna put all this time and effort into it, and you're gonna lose money. And then you're gonna do it again, and you're gonna lose money. And what usually gets cut first is the marketing budget, because you know what? We'll just put more time into it. So, if we look at the things that are out there, we have to find tools that give us time back, right? And so, like I mentioned, my skill set is process. I am incredibly good at making things super complicated, super easy, and I want to show you how we can use artificial intelligence and then automation to help give us a little bit of time back. Okay, so if we look at what's out there from an AI point of view, I am not an expert in AI, I will admit that right now, but I use it as a tool to get me to go to the next phase. And there's 5 elements here, and I'm gonna go from the bottom and go around. If you look at analytical AI, all that is, it says, we've got some data, read it to make some assumption, and then it's gonna kick out some response. It's pretty basic. The next one is functional AI, and we've seen these. These are like the robots that like self-balance themselves, the drones that can fly without really doing much. That's kind of like that functional AI. The interactive AI is like a chat bot. So if you go and put like, hey, how do I do a thing, in that little box in your website says, do these 5 things. Usually that's kind of the chatbot style. Text, when you talk to Google or Siri or whoever, that's that one. And then visual is like if you've ever been in someone's Tesla, right? And it's like scanning the world. I think that's the coolest thing you can see. And it's like rendering the truck that's next to you. That's that one. So these are all taking inputs and then putting out basically a modified version of the input that you put in there. The next version, though, is what everyone is super excited about, and this is this generative AI, right? So you put in the same inputs that you would have put, and then it's recreating something that's never existed before. So the first 5 or 6, whatever is on there, someone told me one time, it's basically just a faster Google search, right? If we think about like functionally what's happening, you type in some information, and it's just repeating something that already exists way faster. This stuff is creating something that's never existed before, right? Much more difficult, and who knows where that's gonna take us. But the reality is, we have to pair all that AI stuff with general automation, okay? So all of us are marketers, right? If we look at what's out there from an automation point of view, there's a couple steps. The first one, and it's easiest with cars, right? We're very familiar with what cars can do. The first one is we drive the car ourselves. We change lanes, we stay in the lane, we brake when we're supposed to brake, that kind of stuff. We do 100% everything manual. Marketing, because we're small teams, we're doing everything manually, most of us, right? We're writing every single email, we're photoshopping our way through Canva or whatever. We're doing almost everything automated or manual. If we get further on, the furthest one down there is Tesla, right? It'll drive the car by itself. That's what we're hoping to get to. Marketing, that's never going to happen. We're too complicated. And as you mentioned before with branding, everyone's brand is different. So it's impossible for us to be in that 5 when it comes to marketing, but we can get close. And I hope to show you how. So again, I want to reiterate this. So if there's a process, right, and if you understand that what your process is, it can be automated. Okay, so this is going to get a little technical, but stay with me, okay? So these are just diagrams when you're talking about talking about automation. So circle means this is a starting point, so signing up for a newsletter is a starting point. The action is a square. There's a decision. Did they open my email or did they not open my email? And then there's a direction. And if you're ever mapping these things out, they always go in one direction. So I challenge you to do this with your own teams. It's not that fun, but it's really enlightening sometimes. So we can do something very, very simple when it comes to these process maps. You have the start, and action, and action, and action. So that's the simplest way you can write these things out. So for example, we're all at this event. Did you get someone's business card? Are you going to follow up with an email? Are you going to connect with them on LinkedIn? And then are you going to message them on their birthday because of your connection on LinkedIn, right? So it's linear. It doesn't come back to get their business card, right? It ends at the very far end with you messaging them for their birthday, right? And then that's going to repeat. You're going to message them again every time it tells you to on LinkedIn. The next one is, you've seen this all, where you buy a product. It sends you a thank you email. A little while later, it sends you another email to repurchase, and then it ends up someplace else. And you can kind of see these are other examples, but they're all linear, right? What we think when we're doing marketing is like, oh, I've got to do all these crazy things. And the reality is it's much simpler than we want to than we think. It's just a process. This is another example of a process, but it gets a little bit more complicated, right? So I added these little triangles, and these are decision trees. If it's a yes, it goes to the right, and if it's a no, it goes down to the next level. And these can get wildly complicated. They can get wildly complicated. But this is a simple advanced email sequence, right? So you sign up for my letter, I send you an email, then it says, did you open it or not? And then I reply based off the action of the user, and then same thing. You can kind of get the idea of this. Like I mentioned, these get way more complicated. So I want to put the same process in a format that we're fairly used to when it comes to events. So if we look at this, so I'm a speaker, right? We have a bunch of speakers on this panel. You guys may or may not have been speakers in the past or something. So we reach out individually and say, hey, Tim, do you want to be a speaker? And I'm like, of course I do. That sounds awesome, okay? Then you are going to send me an email that says, hey, here's all the details. A little while later, you're going to send another email that says, hey, here's all the details. Please do these 5 things. And then at the end of the event, you're going to say, same thing. Hey, today's the day of the event. Love you to do these things. And then finally, you're going to say, hey, let me follow up with you. That sequence of messages for an event never changes. Does that make sense? It never changes. It's always the same. And the reality is the email is almost exactly the same. So typically what we're doing now in our world is we write that email every single time. And if you look down here at the data, if you're doing a weekly event that has 1 speaker, that's 200 individual emails that are handcrafted every single time, if you're doing marketing properly. The reality is we're not. We're not good at this because it's so time consuming. The second one is in a monthly event, right? If you're doing these things, and again, if you're doing them properly, this is the minimum it takes. So you have 3 speakers, like a panel. You're sending each one of those panelists 4 messages, and that's 144 total messages. And if you're reaching out to all your sponsors who sponsored this panel, you're getting a whole bunch more. So total's about 400 emails, handwritten every single month. We're not doing it. We may do 1. Then if you go to a quarterly event or a big event like this, if you were going to do all the guests' messages as well, you're talking something closer to like 15,000, 20,000 emails. Again, we're not doing it. So we're not doing a good job getting our brand out there on the list of people we already have, right? And it's really holding back a lot of donations, sponsorships, and all that kind of stuff. So the reason why, and I'm going to go back to this slide, is we're understaffed, we're overworked, and we're underskilled. We don't know how to use the tools that we already have to do what I just talked about. So what can we do differently now that we have a better idea? Well, like I said before, we can't get to stage 5 in marketing. It's never going to happen. We're going to get closer and closer. But maybe we can get to automation step 3, right? And so this is my side project. I've been building it for about a year or so. All of us have side hustles. I'm not a government employee. I'm an entrepreneur through and through. I've launched lots of companies. And so I like to play around with things that are helping me, right? This did not come through properly, but that's totally fine. So delete that little email in the middle. So the first thing we can do is use AI tools to help us, right? So I'm sure you guys are all familiar with ChatGPT. This prompt basically says, write me 4 emails that I should send to a speaker that are going to go the day the event is announced. I want to send a follow-up email, an email on the day of the event, and then a post email, right? That took about 30 seconds. In fact, when I was doing this, I wanted to show you guys a live demo, but I literally did it over there on that table in about 30 seconds, right? Again, we're trying to get time back. So using tools like this can help us get time back. Okay? Here's the emails that came out. Are they great? Maybe not. I didn't even read them, but it doesn't really matter. We're not doing it, right? We're not doing it. So doing something is better than not doing something. So then what do you do next, right? So you find a tool, okay? So in this case, this is the tool that I'm building. You take those templates, right? Modify them however you want, and then you're going to save them in like a tool like a HubSpot or a MailChimp or whatever. Like my tool's called Chummum. And then you're going to use them, okay? So in our case, what we did is we built a sequence of messages that allows you to automate that outreach process based off the group that you're communicating with. So like I said, there's probably 20, maybe 10 total speakers for this event. All the messages are exactly the same. You can see here that you want a message to go out 7 days before, a day before, the day of the event, and a day after, right? And so this is for the speakers. And then you can set up an entirely new messaging sequence for the group of volunteers or sponsors or whatever. So I built this tool because I was running into the same problem that all nonprofits run into, because I just didn't have time to do the things that I wanted. And our marketing people for the groups that I was with were spread over like 20 different projects. So they didn't even have time to do it either, and they were experts. So the final thing that our tool does, it does a lot more stuff than this, but I wanted to boil it down, is it allows you just to copy and paste it. So your next event, which is exactly the same as this event, you hit copy, and everything is set up for you. All you have to do is change the people. So I kind of want to wrap it all up and say, like, if you understand the tools that are out there, and you understand how AI is never going to replace people in this world of marketing, if you combine them, we can focus way more on awareness because we can do way more with less. And then again, finally, so we don't have time for these tasks that are required. So it's imperative that we start adopting AI and tools to help us, get through what we're trying to do. And so can't wait for these questions.